So as I mentioned before, Buddha, the word Buddha, we tend to think of the monk, Shakyamuni Buddha at that time, the fellow in his yellow robe, looking holy, meditating. But strictly speaking, that's a manifestation of Buddha. Actual Buddha, as I said, is the unmanifest, all-clear, all-knowing consciousness. So this brings us again to, we need to be reminded what mind is. Buddha, as we know, doesn't use the word soul or spirit. It's mind, or it's known as consciousness. Not the brain, it is not physical. That's where at least they agree with the Christians and the Muslims that it's something not physical. But the big difference is the other point about mind is it doesn't come from anybody else. And as we've been talking, this very nice model taken from the more advanced teachings, we've got gross consciousness, which is the conceptuality and the sensory being that we know ourselves as based upon this gross body. And that's what we think we are in the West. That's about it. It's the tip of the iceberg. And then, as we've been talking, we've got subtle consciousness. And then that too is coming inextricably linked to what they call subtle body, which is this subtler physical energies. And this is the model they use in Tibetan medicine as well. They've got this subtle nervous system, they say, 72,000 nerve channels, subtle nervous system. And then coursing through these channels, as they call them, are wind energies or prana, inextricably linked with all the different states of mind. That's how they talk. And then there's this third component of this subtle body, they call it the Red and White Kundalini, which are these subtler aspects of the gross sperm and egg of the male and female. So these very detailed ways of describing how we come into being and, of course, how we die. This is subtle consciousness coming along with its own level of subtle physicality. And so we, as I said, we experience subtle consciousness when we dream. All these experiences of near-death, out-of-body experiences are exactly subtle consciousness. Subtle consciousness, subtle consciousness. So for most of us, it's a strange, mysterious thing. Whereas the great meditators, using especially the tantric techniques, where they can go beyond the gross level of cognition, the gross level of consciousness, using these marvelous techniques, and they can access this subtler level where they can do much more powerful work of deconstructing and seeing reality and blah, 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 and all the things that need to be done. And then the mind goes to very subtle level, the subtlest level of consciousness, which the greatest yogis are attempting to access. Why? Very simply, because that's the one that is most unencumbered by all the junk. No conceptuality, no grossness. It's like the microscope of the mind, the super clearest, most potent level of cognition, of consciousness. And with that level of consciousness, we can remove all the nonsense and see reality. And the tantric techniques get you to that one very quickly. So a Buddha is a person, a mind, that has done all the work of moving through the stages of practice, which is an ever-growing development of less pollution and more clarity and more wisdom and more compassion, until eventually there is nothing left but wisdom and compassion. So you can summarize the characteristics of an enlightened mind, a Buddha, as three. Wisdom, which is basically omniscience, because Buddha would say whatever does exist is necessarily knowable by mind. This is a fundamental point for the Buddha. Fundamental point. Whatever does exist can be cognized by mind. And as we are all mind possessors, the term in Tibetan for sentient beings, Sentient, then our mind is capable of cognizing that which exists without mistake. That's what omniscience is. And the Buddha is a being who has accomplished that capacity. Why? Is because they've removed the pollution from their mind, which is what right now prevents us from seeing things as they exist. That consciousness also has the second characteristic of compassion, which is a summary of all the good qualities, really. It's summarized as that, which is this effortless empathy, this identification with all beings, virtually as if they were yourself. There's no longer a separate sense of self. You're no longer the dualistic idea of you, me, when you're a Buddha. So your consciousness virtually pervades the universe. If your mind is not physical, then how can it be confined by space or time or matter? It cannot. So that omniscient mind necessarily pervades wherever there is existence. Wherever there is existence. And you could say there is nowhere where there's not. It's using the separate word, and sees things as they exist, has this immense empathy and compassion for sentient beings. The omniscience includes, of course, the ability to see each mind perfectly, and therefore knowing perfectly how to help each one. And then, of course, the compassion one is the ability, is the wish to help others, the wisdom to know how, and then the third crucial quality is called power. Even the Christians would call it, what do you call it? Omnipotence. I keep meaning to say impotence, but it's omnipotence. So really, which sounds like God, isn't it? Omnipotence, omniscience, infinite compassion. That is, for the Buddha, called Buddha. And every being's mind, consciousness, possesses that potential. And that's the job of a Buddhist, basically, to become that Buddha. And so that consciousness is beginningless. It's a product, so another way of looking at the mind, and how come we don't need creating. But Buddha would say it's an unnecessary embellishment, a dualistic concept. We don't need creating. So the way to think about this, I remember one time in Dharamsala, His Holiness said, it's easy to prove reincarnation. He meant intellectually deposit it, which is the first step, of course. And what he said, and it's a crucial thing, the way you describe in Buddhist, when you study Buddhist philosophy. And it's reasonable. So, as far as the Buddha is concerned, the two types of, there's matter and there's minds in this universe. You can say there are another type of a category of phenomena that are neither matter nor mind, such as time. It's not a matter nor mind. But as far as the physical world is concerned, that's called matter, and as we've been discussing, it's made of the 4 elements. It's the same model that we used back in Galileo and that lot, back in the Middle Ages. The 4 elements, earth, air, fire, water. All physical matter is made of the 4 elements. And then we have consciousnesses. And like I've been saying, the way they describe in this model, the consciousness has this intimate, inextricable relationship with its own set of elements, basically. So, the other way to talk about the mind. Okay, the other way to talk about so we establish this is made of the elements. This is clay, and so it's physical, so it's made of the 4 elements. Well, what's the cause of that, Mummy? Well, in this linear sense of cause and effect, moment by moment, well, sweetheart, the substantial, they call it, the substantial cause of that cup is its material, the clay. And then you go back a previous moment. It has to be tracked back to a previous moment, right before there. That was the main cause of this at this moment. And you keep tracking that back in an unbroken chain of mental moments of clay, and you're going to get it back to where it was where the clay comes from, in the earth. And you keep tracking and keep tracking and keep tracking for what was the cause of that bit. Well, what caused that previous one? And that was the previous one. What caused that? You're going to get back to the first moment of the universe. And then you're going to ask, well, where did that come from? And you have to keep going to previous universes. Because the elements, like all matter, all things that do exist, necessarily are beginningless. They're continuity of moments. You can't have a first moment of this universe. You can't have a first Big Bang. As His Holiness says, no problem, Big Bang. That's not the first one. Because the simple idea of cause and effect, the concept of cause and effect, whatever exists at any given moment, that thing is the effect, isn't it, of a previous cause. Has to be. So therefore it is utterly impossible to find a thing that didn't have a cause. It's impossible. You just can't posit such a thing. It's utter nonsense. You can't. So then why, but we desperately want a first moment. There's something quite instinctive within us. We want a first moment. And then those of us, of course, who've got the creative lineage in our mind, we're very satisfied with the idea of a creator who isn't caused, who is permanent, who is inherent, and who is the source of everything else. That satisfies our mind. The Buddha would say there is such a thing as omniscient mind. I've just said, he says it's called Buddha. There is such a thing as, he even uses the term superior being. But he's got a very different interpretation of what it is and where it comes from, and its job. Buddha asserts superior being, but doesn't give it the job of creating everything else, because simply we don't need to be created by anybody else. Look at the law of cause and effect. We create ourselves. So in terms of the matter of something, the substantial cause of this cup, you can track it back and you get back to the first moment of the universe. And then you've got to keep tracking it back before that. And you won't find the first cause. Same with its mind. So we're positing that mind is not physical. Well, clearly the substantial cause of a non-physical phenomenon has to be something similar to it, which is a non-physical thing, a previous moment before that, which simply speaking is a previous moment of this mind of mine. This mind of mine, and the previous moment of this mind is the cause of this present moment. Well, what was the cause of that moment? It has to have been a previous moment. And before you know it, you know perfectly well. You go back to when you were 1, when you were a month, when you're in the womb. And then there's, of course, the big question of the first moment of conception, when the egg and sperm met. And when the Buddhist view would say consciousness entered into it. Well, you have to say, we're tracking it right back now, from now, this series of moments of my mind, this unbroken chain of mental moments, back to the first second of conception. You have to get back there. And you can't there can't be a piece in the middle missing. Well, I didn't exist for 5 minutes, you know. It's just impossible. It's an unbroken chain of mental moments. So what is the cause of that first moment of consciousness in the womb, which is the beginning of the product of the object called Robina? It has to be it can only be a previous moment of that continuity of mental moments. It can't be anything else. And you keep tracking it back and you will see, like with the cup, it is also beginningless. You cannot have a first moment. So it's not a difficult concept. You just got to think about it, you know, see if it even intellectually is coherent. So there's a reason Buddha says we don't need creating. And it's a bizarre idea anyway. A really dualistic, bizarre idea. Because mind for the Buddha is totally experiential. It's a name for your subjective experience. It's a bizarre concept for the Buddha that, you know, your mother can give you anger. It's beyond bizarre. The implications of this are just awful. We don't follow through. The logical implications of this. It's interesting. Or indeed of a creator making it. So mind is not physical. Mind cognizes. Mind has the potential to cognize that which exists. Mind is beginningless. Mind doesn't come from anyone else. So when the mind is fully developed, it's a Buddha mind. It's the Dharmakaya, as they say in Sanskrit, this strange phrase translated as truth body. It's not a body at all, but they call it the Dharmakaya. It's the term used to refer to enlightened mind. That's it. Now that's the meaning of Buddha. That consciousness. That's Buddha. Now you could basically say there's one of them. So when you become a Buddha and Al becomes a Buddha and I become a Buddha and John becomes a Buddha, we don't all bump into each other in the sky. This is my Dharmakaya, there's your Dharmakaya. Not like that. It's basically we're all the same Dharmakaya. You could easily say that. But there are millions and trillions of emanations. So when Al becomes a Buddha, he's going to bop around, manifesting in this body and that body, all over the place to benefit the sentient beings he's got particular karma with. And each of us doing the same. So in this sense of trillions of emanations, trillions of forms, trillions of what they call the Rupakaya, the form body of the Buddha. So you've got Dharmakaya. There it is. This is like up here. Dharmakaya. And then underneath it, you have Rupakaya, form body. The form in which enlightened mind manifests for the sake of sentient beings. Now this is where the interesting difference, the Christian teachings would say there is one owner called Jesus Christ. Of the manifestation of God. Buddha would say no, there's countless, trillions of manifestations of the Buddha, all bopping around benefiting sentient beings, which is their job. So even the lowest level bodhisattva, you know, as you go through your stages of development heading towards Buddhahood, the lowest level bodhisattva, we'll go to discuss this, the bodhisattva path, you know, a certain stage of development, and there's 10 stages of development of bodhisattvas. Even the first level bodhisattva can manifest their mind in 100 different forms simultaneously to benefit sentient beings. And as you keep progressing in your power and wisdom and compassion, you keep progressing in this capacity to manifest your mind in different forms. An ant here, a dog there, a human here. Which is why, look, for the Tibetans, it's a very comfortable notion They have a saying, you don't know who anybody is, so don't judge. So now the forms, if you could break it down again, the Rupakaya, you could divide it into Dharmakaya, it goes down to Rupakaya, then you divide that into two. Then there's called the enjoyment body, Sambhogakaya, which is subtle light body that only the bodhisattvas can see in their meditation. And all the pictures of all the deities are this one, the bodhisattva, the way that Buddha manifests, the way the Buddhas manifest in the Mahayana component of the path, in the bodhisattva style. That's the Sambhogakaya. You could say like that. You could say that. And then or another way to say, it's the form in which the Buddha manifests that only the great yogis, the great bodhisattvas in their meditation can see. You can't see it unless you're a very highly devolved being. You won't see in daily life. Hang on. That's it. So then you've got the Nimanakaya, or the emanation body, or in Tibetan Tulku. And this, you could say, is the form the Buddha would manifest where regular Joes like you and me can see. So we could say that the Buddha, as the monk, is the emanation body. You could say Vajrasattva, that we're visualizing, is the Sambhogakaya. So there's the Nimanakaya and the Sambhogakaya. According to different levels of beings, you can see one or the other. There are two different ways in which the Buddha manifests to benefit sentient beings, which is the job of the Buddha, which is why they are now a Buddha, so they can benefit sentient beings throughout the universes for as long as time exists. What was the question, Jen? You mean Shakyamuni Buddha? Yeah. I think in some of the teachings he gave these things, but most of these teachings of the Mahayana, even the Mahayana, are not taught in the form that he lived as a monk. Most of them not. And then mostly the tantric teachings not either. They're all given to yogis in meditation. They're more sort of subtle. So what I said didn't help. It obviously didn't help. You're asking the same question again. I'm sorry, I didn't explain properly. I'll say it again. There are different, put it this way, as His Holiness says, there are different levels at which the Buddha gives teachings. And there are some that are more subtle and more subtle than others. There are different ways in which Buddha gave his teachings. Yeah. That would be a way of saying it, yeah. Definitely. Sorry, what? What do you mean, yet they remain in person? Yeah, Buddha's a person, sure. Buddha's a person. You could argue there's one Dharmakaya. Yeah. Don't ask me, dear. What do you mean, though? I mean, a person is just... I mean, are you talking about the manifestations of the Buddha? Are you talking about the Dharmakaya? There are trillions of manifestations of Buddha, aren't there? And they're all persons, aren't they? I've no idea about that one. I don't know. So what's the question then? I'm lost in busy hour. What's this? Say it again. Sounds fascinating. Start again. I'm completely lost there. Forgive me. But is it a valid one? We want to bring it here. What's this? Whose teaching is this?
In philosophy, there is a philosophical practice called Monism, which is one mind.
And what do they say? What is this one mind?
One mind pervades the whole.
Hang on, stop for a second, Alice. Let me ask you a question about this view. Is this one mind including yours and mine? Or is it just only a holy mind?
No.
Well, that's clearly, plainly absurd, isn't it, if you're going to use Buddha's view? So why are you even bringing it up?
I'm bringing it up because...
But listen, Al, listen. What I'm saying is, just what Buddha said, the Dharmakaya is a term used to refer to enlightened mind. And you could argue there's one. You're saying there's a view that says there's just one mind anyway, and we're all part of it.
No, I didn't say...
I said, are there other beings? And you said, no, there's just one mind.
that view.
That's what I'm saying in that view. So, Al, stop. So stop. So according to that view, what's it called?
Monism.
So according to monism, where do you fit into it? Where does Al fit into this? Is he part of that one mind? I'm asking you what they say, Al. What do they say about a guy called Al and a person called Robina? Where do we fit into this one mind?
According to that view,
Yeah.
we're all part of it.
Okay, good. That, for the Buddha, is clearly absurd. So there's not but we're discussing apples and oranges here.
No.
We are, because listen, according to the Buddhist view, if we were all that, we would all be Buddha now. We wouldn't have a problem. So therefore, it can't be the same as...
I'm not, excuse me, just check. I'm not positive that view.
But what's your question then, Al?
And how, if there is one Dharmakaya, how is it that Buddha remains...
Okay, that's a fine question. But I want to know what's that got to do with monism then. Why'd you bring monism in? That completely threw me.
Because that's the opposite to what I understood the Dharmakaya is to be.
What is?
Monism.
But it's not even relevant. It's like bringing in the Jesus Christ teaching. It's not relevant here. It's just not part of the discussion, in my opinion. Monism is a particular view, you just said, you educated me, thank you, that says there's just one mind and we're all part of it. Is that what you're saying? Is that what you're saying they say, Al? I have to get that clear.
That's what I'm saying.
They say, good, now let's leave that alone, and can we close that chapter, open a new page and have a new discussion. Now that is, back to your question. Your question is...
How does the Dharmakaya fit into the separateness of a person called Buddha?
Okay, I think if you say the Buddha is a person and there are separate Buddhas, you are referring to the Rupakaya, not to the Dharmakaya, Al. Because there can't be separate Dharmakayas. It's a contradiction in terms. There's no dualism. If there is one, there's all-pervading, all-wise, all-knowing, all-clear consciousness, that's called Dharmakaya.
The danger is that can be easily interpreted as one mind, a monistic.
No, it can't, because if you hear, no, Al, it's got nothing to do with it, because sentient beings are not a Buddha. We're not part of a Dharmakaya. What are you talking about? I'm a regular, ordinary sentient being with delusions. I'm absolutely not part of the Dharmakaya. That's not what's being said, and there is only the danger if you get the wrong teaching. Are we communicating or not now? But have we come to a conclusion here? Have you got your answer? No, it isn't okay, Al. We need to continue like we did last time. What is your problem with... let me say it again. Dharmakaya is a word used to refer to enlightened mind. Then you have lots of different Buddhas bopping around in forms called Rupakayas. Trillions of them. They're all persons. Where's the contradiction? There's the answer, though. The Dharmakaya is the consciousness. The person is that Buddha Shakyamuni, Mr. Buddha this one, Tara Buddha there, Chenrezig here. They're all beings who are enlightened, and they're the Rupakaya. So they are individual beings. They're individual Buddhas, manifesting in different forms for different sentient beings' sake. And they all fit the definition of person. You are correct. Well, then maybe then the Dharmakaya is person. So what's your problem? No, really sincerely, what's the problem now then, if that's true?
Because a person is essentially separate.
Who told you that? Where's the definition that says that? Is that what a person is?
This is a person.
That's a sentient person, an ordinary deluded person. So what you have to do is research for us and come back and see if the Dharmakaya fits the definition of person. In which case we can then continue the debate. But the monist one for me was throwing it as not relevant at all, remotely, because they're saying there's one big fat consciousness which we, even as deluded beings, are part of. And that's nothing to do with what Buddha says. And there is no danger in thinking that if you think the Dharmakaya, if you hear the teachings properly. Of course, if we've been wishy-washy, we can misunderstand it. So we have to have proper valid teachers, isn't it? Good. Thank you very much. What else? So I was getting somewhere, wasn't I? I was trying to discuss. Yes, Jane? Yes. We're going, please. Sorry, what do you? What about it? What is it? Yeah, what about it? So go on. Then? Yeah, I understand. No, actually, he was a bodhisattva when he did that. So what's the question? What's the question, darling? Oh, God almighty, Jane, you asked the strangest questions. You've got to find out yourself. You've got to read all the teachings and find out what you think. I don't believe anything. I take it as my hypothesis, darling. If you have doubts about these things, you've got to start studying and researching. You've got to look into it and find out. Buddha's either a load of rubbish or he's speaking the truth. Either these things are right or they're wrong. I'm just telling you what I've heard in the teachings, and I'm trying to take it as my working hypothesis and doing my best to pass it on in my effective, progressive way. It's for you to find out if you think that's a possibility. But when you hear the Bodhisattva teachings, which clearly you haven't heard many of, because you wouldn't ask that question if you had, it's okay. Maybe as we discuss a bit that now then, what's possible as you develop the skill on the Bodhisattva path, okay? Well, I'll tell you some of the things they say. And then that'll answer your question. It's up to you to discover, is that true or not? I mean, is any of this true? You've got to find out, sweetheart. Only you can find that out. Lots of people can tell you it's true, but you have to find that out by working at it, isn't it? That's your job, isn't it? Wouldn't you say? Huh? Well, that's exactly right, yeah. So then the way... I know, but the point for me that's so important, which is what I like for myself personally about the Buddhist teachings, is that there are ways of explaining all this. And when you understand the nuts and bolts of what a bodhisattva is and what the capabilities are and what you're capable of doing step by step, which one studies in great detail, when you study in depth, then it explains exactly what and how and why. You understand? So, for example, like I said, so how would it be, then we have to try and think about what it is about a mind that enables it to have the power to actually manifest at will in another body. This is what we're talking about here. I mean, a Buddha is a being whose mind, first of all, pervades the universe. The only time we've heard that is when we hear about God, right? Or the monists, whoever they are. Where do they live, these monists? Where do they live, these monists? Yeah, but is that just old, ancient, 1,000-year-old, no one actually believes them anymore? It's just weird ideas in a book. Are there real people? Are there real people who think these things? There's so many intellectual ideas. It's bad enough. It's so confusing. God almighty. Anyway, so listen. Huh? Go, John. What, John? What? Which? No, I mean, when you're learning music, you only can know, if you're only at grade 2, you're at grade 2. You've got to move to grade 3. You've got lots of questions, haven't you? You keep moving. Then you're in grade 3, you go to grade 4. So of course we have questions. But the point is, if we just, if it is a coherent system, and this is a really important point I like to make. You see, we're so used to thinking of spiritual kind of experiences are these things that come randomly, out of the blue, no one knows why, there's no explanation. They come and they go, you know, and you have your spiritual experience. But that's why I keep using ordinary examples here. That Buddhism is a system. It's an elaborate, detailed explanation of the universe. That's what it is. And so, if it's coherent, if it's valid, it's got to be coherent. And that's why if we listen to the teaching, it'll all fall into place. If it is valid, like if it, you know, I always use this example. You've never heard of acupuncture. We've always just had allopathic, let's say, in our culture. And then we suddenly hear about these weird Chinese people who put needles in people. And it sounds so peculiar. So first of all, you can't squeeze it into the allopathic system because the fundamental assumptions are so different, aren't they? It's just fundamentally, it's like another language altogether. So what you've got to do is step out of your own system and then listen to this and then have a willingness to listen, to take it as a hypothesis. Because the only way you can even investigate Buddhism or acupuncture is actually listen and learn. Then you've got something to think about. Then you have something to think about. Because you've got to think about it in a coherent way. So, well, you do the work. So if you're learning, if you're first opening yourself to acupuncture, you've got to completely empty your mind of all your other assumptions about health. You've got to listen to their model. And what I'm saying is this: if it is valid, it's got to be a proper system, and therefore it's got to be coherent. So I think you could learn intellectually all about acupuncture. You could even tell someone else about it without even putting one needle in somebody yet, because if it's coherent, it has to be coherent intellectually. It's got to be a really coherent system. And you could even pass a test on it and answer all the questions. Well, this because of this is next to this meridian, it's this, and it's got to be coherent. And you've got to be able to learn it intellectually. Then you can start putting needles in people and healing them. So the same with Buddhism. It is actually, you know, there's bits and pieces of Buddhism that are studied all over the place. In countries, some will do this, some will do that, and just a bit of this, a bit of that. But it's a big picture there. And for me, I like the big picture. And that certainly is what's studied in the Tibetan monastic situation, you know, the big monastic universities. They learn the entire world view. So, what you do is, like we're doing, we listen to the different explanations, and you do it more, you study it probably seriously if you wanted to, then you learn the words that Buddha says. What is the mind? What is the universe? What is this? What is karma? You learn all these things. So slowly you apply that explanation to your life. Do you see what I'm saying? You slowly apply, and then you keep doing the meditations, and then you get concentration, and then you get clairvoyance, and you keep increasing your power, you keep increasing, and you keep learning more, and then you get through to the Bodhisattva path, and then you keep increasing your power with realizing emptiness, you keep increasing your renunciation, you keep increasing your bodhicitta, and you literally develop the power, because your now mind is so pure and so clear, that you can have the power to manipulate the external world. This is like nothing, according to the Buddhist view, what we can accomplish. So then eventually you're able to manifest your own mind in different bodies. You can be a mouse here, a dog there. This is what they're capable of. And it's all explained exactly step by step how you can do this. Until eventually you're a Buddha. You have your mind pervades the universe. You see the minds of all beings, all their past and all their future. You have the power, you have infinite empathy for everyone, and you have the power to effortlessly, spontaneously manifest your mind in trillions of forms, throughout trillions of universes, for trillions of eons, for the sake of trillions of sentient beings. Now, that sounds completely insane. You don't think that's something you can learn to do. That's what God's called, and we leave it there. But this is what Buddha says. We are all moving to what we have the potential to accomplish. And all the teachings are all laid out, all the methodology, all the protocols, all the techniques are all still there to accomplish that. Do you hear what I'm saying, Jane? So it's up to us to, you know, it's like in the middle of acupuncture. Oh, do you believe that needles can really heal people? I don't know. I'm trying to work it out, dear. You know, like, come on. One step at a time. I'm taking it as my... I know, but then taking it as our working hypothesis. And all we're doing is, you know, for me, I've decided I'll be a Buddhist. I've committed to Buddhism. I wear the robe. That's my extra own commitment. And I haven't done that much study, but I try to do what I can. You know, I'm doing my job. I'm supposed to be teaching it, you know. So one step at a time is all I can say. And I'm prepared to keep moving on this working hypothesis until I can prove it's wrong. That's all. I mean, as Dalai Lama says, when you finally get to a certain point, you do discover that what he said isn't working and isn't correct, then you must reject the Buddha. So that's fine by me. I'm happy with that approach. I'm prepared to wait. Keep moving, keep moving. And so all I can say is if it keeps, the little bit that I do see and do know can prove to myself that I can change my mind. That I can prove. I've done that. And so far, that's what I've proven. Good enough. I'm going to keep moving. And for me, intellectually, it's a coherent system. It explains things. It's a coherent explanation. And I'm trying to see if it's an actual truth. That's for me. I'm prepared to. That's why for me, I never say I believe. I never say those words purposely. So it's more relaxing. I'm taking it as my working hypothesis. Do you understand? Yeah. So anyway, the Bodhisattva. So we're talking about what a Buddha is. So now let's look at the Bodhisattva part. So we've been through the first stages of the first part, the essence of which is karma, controlling our body and speech, like junior school level, control the body and speech. Why? Because when we analyse what is behind the actions we do, and it's usually attachment or anger or ignorance or one of the delusions, that's what makes it negative. So given that our body and speech is berserk, we control them first. This is junior school level. Already you become a marvellous person if you don't kill, don't lie, don't steal, don't badmouth. And the immediate benefit is it helps you calm your mind down. And the long-term benefit is you don't get a lower realm rebirth. You keep getting a decent human rebirth so you can keep on moving on your spiritual path. Then we know we can go to high school, but we now get to the root of the problem, which is the delusions themselves, the neuroses that mislead us. We've got to get to them and unravel and unpack and deconstruct and rid the mind of them. So like I said, if we graduate from high school, we'd realise emptiness, we'd perfect that realisation, we'd achieve our own nirvana, and then we'd zap into bliss when we died. But we can go further. We can go to university, which is the Mahayana component. So here, we've got to go through all the junior school and high school anyway. And then we go to the learning about how to continue basically working on our minds. The job is not different, but the reference points are different. In the first stages of practice in the wisdom wing, you could say that our main business is our mind. Our business is ourself. Back off, leave sentient beings alone, don't harm them, don't kill them, don't steal from them, back off, mind your own business and work on your mind. That's the main concern in the wisdom wing. That's really like the retreat mode. That's what our concern is. So when things happen in the day, delusions leap into the person, leap into the event, stick fingers everywhere, have opinions about everything. Back off. Everything in our life, according to the wisdom wing practice, is a catalyst for me to learn about my mind. That's the way to say it. So you really learn to mind your own business. That's the wisdom wing. Pretty profound already. Compassion wing, you're continuing to work on your mind. You're continuing to purify your mind. You're continuing to get rid of the delusions. But you're now doing it in the context of sentient beings. You're a bit more controlled now. You can come down from the mountains and carry on the job around sentient beings. Now sentient beings are the grist for your mill. You continue to work on your mind. But here we're now going through these various practices, and we'll discuss here this particular packaging of practices, 11 of them, which is a combination of various lineages of teachings from the past, that culminate in the development of this bodhicitta, this Sanskrit word that technically is just translated as awakening attitude, kind of abstract. So what it's referring to is this amazing attitude that only wants to benefit others and wants to never stop becoming a Buddha, because then I'll be qualified to really benefit others. That's bodhicitta. And that's this amazing next stage of development. But you go through the 11 steps to get there. So the first one of these are just these little techniques that have been cultivated together from the time of back from India through Tibet, and this 11 is a series of 2 techniques coming together. So the very first one is the cultivation. Okay, one more point. You could say the main obstacle in the wisdom wing is grasping at the inherent self. And then all the neuroses, the delusions, attachment especially, as a result of that. So, but the way they talk about the main obstacle in the compassion wing, it's what they call self-cherishing or selfishness, putting self first. So you can say we put self first because we grasp at self. But so it's a particular take on what causes suffering in the compassion wing, the way they talk. You know, that self-cherishing is the problem. That's putting self first. And that's what we're trying to annihilate, going through these stages of development in these 11 techniques. So what we're trying to gain, which then kicks into bodhicitta, is this amazing state of being called exchanging self for others. It's like we're heading towards making this paradigm shift when we cherish others spontaneously and naturally instead of self, which is an outrageous concept. But as Babonka Rinpoche says, we need to be a suitable vessel to do that. That means you've got to have done some wisdom work first. If you're already completely neurotic and miserable and overwhelmed and victim and you're abused in your relationships, you have no self-respect, you have self-loathing, you are not ready for these practices. No way. No way. You've got to learn to cherish yourself first. You've got to learn to cherish yourself first. You've got to learn to kind of get even some sense of self before you can begin to even see attachment and anger and your own problems, like we talked about karma before. You've got to be a suitable vessel. So this is really advanced. It sounds kind of cute when we talk about compassion, but it's really more radical teaching. You've got to be a very healthy type of being who's already looked into your mind deeply, have a sense of understanding of karma, of attachment, of the delusions and how they cause you suffering. Then this really makes sense, this path. So this first practice, like the foundation practice of these 11 that gives rise to all the others, is called equanimity. It's a regular English word. But here it's got a very particular definition, like all these words, you know, these terms we're using here. So equanimity, when you've accomplished it, is this heartfelt recognition, basically, knowledge, awareness, recognition, that enemy, friend and stranger are exactly the same. Really from one point of view, they wish to be happy. It's a very simple concept, but really hard to hear. So right now, first of all, you've only got 3 categories of beings on this earth. Objects of attachment, we call them friends. Objects of aversion, enemies. Objects of indifference, strangers. There's no 4th category. And so this is the way all the world divides beings. Everybody's got their friends, their enemies, and their strangers. Because we've all got attachment, aversion, and indifference. And ignorance, the 3 root delusions. So here, what we're trying to do is step out of the equation. And as we're doing this, we can even visualize right now in front of us, eyeball to eyeball, a person we can happily label enemy. We mightn't use that term much. But let's think of a person we have aversion for, who's hurt us, who's harmed us, who's abused us, who's rejected us, you know, whatever you want to call. We've all got people like that in our lives. Even if you can't think of nobody who's done that, just a person who irritates you. Enemy, right in front, object of aversion. Then to the left in front, your beloved, the one you're attached to, the one whom as soon as you think, you go towards them. Friend. On the right, you have your stranger, a person whose face you can just put there, whom you don't know anything about, but whose face you recognize at least enough. You know? Well, this is the world. We have some friends, some enemies, and 99.999% are strangers. This is the world. Everybody has these groups. So right now, we just have the default ways of approaching them. Attachment to the friends, aversion to the enemies. We keep distant from them, and we couldn't care less about the vast majority of the earth. And what Buddha's saying is that we have the capacity to go absolutely beyond this, to eventually, you know, cultivate love and compassion for every single sentient being equally, and then to exchange self for others, and then to have bodhicitta. This is where we're heading. This is an incredible concept. So this first step is to using logic to argue with ego's very entrenched misconceptions, which is that believes in real friend, real enemy, and real stranger. So, what we're trying to do is so the thing to do is visualize these two people. Then you're using lots of different logical arguments, basically, to break down ego's views. And I'll just talk about a few, But you do this very seriously in meditation, thinking it through logically. So right now we can see, instinctively, we go towards the friends, away from the enemy, couldn't care about the stranger. So what we're trying to do is change that. So, one approach, for example. First of all, the main thing you're trying to do really, if you think about it, is stepping out of it. Right now, when I think of friend, enemy, stranger, it's three people, and I see them necessarily through the filter of my needs, don't I? This is how we see everybody in the universe, as an extension of my needs. If they satisfy my needs, they're friends. They appear nice to me. And then I'm prepared to have love for them. We do have some love, but it's, unstable as love as I said. Or we'd say it's got strings attached. Then you've got the enemies. We don't love them, absolutely for sure. We don't want them to be happy, no way. And then the stranger. And so even first of all, look how they appear so totally different to us. We take all this for granted. But all of this, remember, like we've been talking, is a result of whatever's in our mind. Things appear to us according to what's in our mind. That's what's most shocking. The person appears beautiful to you because they satisfy your attachment. There's also some virtue between you. The person appears ugly because they don't satisfy your attachment. And the person appears neither, couldn't care less about them, because they neither harm you nor help you. So the thing we're trying to accomplish here is that they're equal. From which point of view? They're not equal from the point of view of whether they love me or not. They're not equal from the point of view of, that. They're not equal. From my point of view, they're not. But from their own point of view, get me out of the equation. From their point of view, they are the same as each other. From their point of view. This is what we're trying to see. And they're the same from many points of view. They've all got noses, all got eyes, all got constipations. But the one reason we're trying to use to see them as equal is that they want to be happy. Now this already is shocking. We can look at our friend. We want them to be happy. That's the definition of love. May you be happy. That's love. And of course we know they want to be happy, and we want them to be happy, so it's easy for us. But look at the enemy, and you say they want to be happy. The first thing we'll say is, excuse me, they don't deserve it. What do you mean they want to be happy? We don't even want to go there. We're not even asking them to want to be happy yet. They come 6 stages later. That's love. But just to even recognize that they're equal to your friend is already takes so much effort in the mind. Just to hear the simple words. Now, what's the logic to prove this, that they want to be happy? Yeah, no, that's not the same. The logic we're trying to use here is the same as each other. Same as us comes 5 steps on, the way they use this thinking. This thinking here is to try and see how, it's easy for us to see how the friend wants to be happy, because they're our friend. But to use the logic that it's not logical the way we think now. Okay, put it this way too. So what I'm saying is, a really good logic for me would be this. That enemy was your beloved a month ago, until he left you for a younger version. Now we knew, when he was my friend, look how he looked. This really proves he's not innately an enemy. Because when he was my friend, absolutely I adored him. I wanted him to be happy. But now he's left me because my love was contingent upon the attachment, wasn't it? It's got strings attached. We never thought this. We thought I loved him unconditionally. But clearly I don't. Because when he's left me, I'm just devastated, aren't I? Distraught. And if I'm really brave enough, I'll see my mind, and I'm really hoping she'll leave him and make him miserable like he left me. Isn't it? So to think that he wants to be happy and that he did it because he's trying to be happy is too painful for me. But it's a simple fact that you have to prove. It's easy to prove it. It's a fact. It's just we can't bear to hear it. Of course he wants to be happy. He wanted to be happy the day before he left you. You knew then he wanted to be happy. But now suddenly you don't want to know that he wants to be happy. So it can't be different. And the thing is, that same guy, my John, who was my beloved, who is now my enemy, he was a stranger before. Now, we can't even look at a stranger, they're so boring, you know. You understand? We don't even think about strangers. I remember, I always quote this, I was reading my iPad, when I read my news on my iPad, you know, all the newspapers configure their designs differently. In the New York Times I read, and it's got, on the front page, it's got little stories with a heading, and then you click, you know, you press the story, and then it opens the whole story. And I noticed that the corner of my eye, the right-hand corner on my iPad, the heading said, 360 people killed in ferry accident in Tasmania. Now, of course, Tasmania are my people, aren't they? So I went, oh! I was going to read it, and then I saw it said in Tanzania. And then I kind of went, oh, it's okay. You understand? No, I just, in the corner of my eye, thought it said Tanzania. But what I'm saying is, Tasmanians are my people, and Tanzanians are strangers. So suddenly, because as soon as I saw Tanzania, it just didn't touch me the same way, because it's strangers. That's just how we are, isn't it? So the exercise here is to get yourself out of the equation and realize that enemy, friend, and stranger are completely my projections. It doesn't mean that he didn't harm me, and it doesn't mean my beloved isn't kind to me, and it doesn't mean the stranger hasn't done either. It's true, but what the point here is, they're the wrong reason to use for why you love a person. We're heading towards wanting to love them. This is a clear point. It's quite a precise point. The logic we use now for why I love Mary is because she's kind to me. The logic I use for why I don't love John is because he's unkind to me. Do you see? It's so clear. We never question that logic. And equanimity is the first step in stepping out of that illogic and moving towards the wanting to want all beings being happy, regardless of whether they benefit me or not, which is a shocking idea, you know. But this first one is to see that they're all equal. From their point of view, not mine. That's a different discussion. But the enemy and friend and stranger are the same from their point of view. Now, you know, this is my enemy, friend and stranger, but if you look at them and they're all strangers to you, you know they're all equal, don't you? Because they're all the same for you. So it proves that they're the same in themselves between each other, in relation to each other. That's all. And it's like a really technical point. But to use logic like 1 minute friend, next minute stranger. I mean, there's always this quote from one of the Buddha's one of the teachings, they quote it, that there's two main disciples. One of the main disciples of Buddha, Shariputra, and he was one of the ones who was really best in emptiness, and he had clairvoyance and all these things. And there he was, walking around like they did, on his arms round with his bowl, you know. And he passed this house in the village, and he looked in, and he said to himself, what a vast samsara is. They all translated differently. And what he said was, what's he saying? The son kicks his mother while he eats his father and nurses his enemy. So what he saw was, with his clairvoyance, this is bloke sitting down. He's nursing a baby who is the reincarnation of the bloke down the road who raped his wife and he killed. But now, because of his attachment to his wife, it's born as his baby. He's nursing his beloved baby, his enemy. He's kicking the dog, while the dog eats the mother eats the bones of her husband. The dog is the reincarnation of his mummy, who was very attached to that place, so got born as a dog there. And he's eating fish, which is the reincarnation of his daddy, who was very attached to eating the fish in the back pond, and who catch them. Now there's a fish there. And the dog is the mother, is eating the bones of the husband. So what a fast samsara is, he says. So I mean, it's pretty cosmic and ridiculous that, you know, we even now get so stuck in the real label of enemy, friend and stranger, you know. So equanimity, I haven't said many of the reasons even. Equanimity is this recognition that they're equal from the point of view of wanting to be happy. And that just takes time to think through to see it's logically true. It's logically true. Another way I like to use is if my enemy, my friend and my stranger are looking at me, just me, right? And my friend looks at me with dazzle eyes, thinks I'm gorgeous. My enemy's looking at daggers at me and hates me. and the stranger finds me completely boring and can't even look because I'm their stranger as well. Think of it this way. I'm an enemy, friend and stranger for 3 people, right? Well, they look at me different. One couldn't care and wants me to suffer. One adores me. But I'm the same, aren't I? I'm exactly the same every minute. Whether I'm an enemy or a friend or a stranger, I'm the same. I want to be happy. You know, so, you know, you hate like politicians. I always remember how people hated George Bush. Just to think that George Bush wants to be happy infuriates people. What do you mean he wants to be happy? He doesn't deserve it, you know. So it's really, we can't bear the thought of the fact, we're not even asking ourselves to want him to be happy yet. That's love. That comes 5 steps on. But just to recognise he's the same as the enemy. He's the same as the friend. He wants to be happy. It's a really big one to get to. It already calms your mind down hugely. But you've got to see how it's logically true. Not a question of whether he deserves it. That's not the issue here. Whether you want him to be happy, that's not the issue here. It's simply that every being, this is one of the fundamentals that Buddha starts with, that every single sentient being is driven by the wish to be happy. Check yourself. Everybody. And why we do terrible things to each other is because we're deluded and we truly believe leaving that wife is going to make me happy. We truly believe that stealing that money will make us happy. We truly believe that killing somebody will make us happy. We're deluded. That's the point. So that's not even the issue. But we want to be happy. With what? What's that? No, you're missing the point. We're not discussing whether they're right or wrong. We're not discussing whether they deserve it. That's none of the point, though. That's none of the point. What we're trying to see, the most bare, fundamental, that's a really good point you made. We've got to try and see the most bare bones, fundamental point, that every single being, the Hitlers, the lions, the mother, the maniacs, the monsters, the rapists, the terrorists, what? Every single, try and analyse. We've got to look at this. It's a very simple but quite a profound, humbling point. When we really can see how that's true, every single living being is driven by the wish to be happy. Can you see that? Can you see? Try and imagine. Can you see that? No, because you're struggling. No, what you're doing is thinking they don't deserve to be happy. I didn't say that. No, you're missing it. You're completely missing it. That's not the issue. No, I didn't say they were happy. You're not listening. The wish to be happy. Look at yourself. Is the wish to be... Do you do things to hurt yourself purposely? I mean, we're a bit stupid, we do. But don't you think that you're driven to be happy every minute? Why do you think... I mean, look at a mouse. You analyse other people. Look at people. It's a really interesting point you're bringing up. Every single being is driven by the wish to be happy. Is distressed, wants to be happy, wants to be satisfied. That's why they eat. That's why they go... What? No, stop. Hey, stop. We're not saying it's a virtue. I didn't say it's virtuous to want to be happy. It's simply a bare bones fundamental fact. I'm not saying you therefore do good things. I'm not saying you are happy. I'm not saying you even know what happiness is. But we're driven. And why do you think a person eats food? Because you want to be happy. Why do you stop eating food? Because you want to be happy. Why do you sleep? Because you want to be happy. Why does somebody steal? Because they think it's going to make them happy. They're following their attachment. Why does a person lie and torture? Because they think that's what it seems to give them some feeling of happiness. Do you see? We're all driven by the wish to be happy. Seeing that fact is kind of sobering. And this is what this equanimity is about. You see, it's a good point you're bringing up. So to think about it. Equanimity. It's easy to say the word, but it's quite intense when the world is full of such suffering. It's a pretty kind of powerful concept that every single being is equal. It's incredible. Your points are not shown that. Equanimity. So then, what we do with this in real terms, in real life, doesn't mean you get all wishy-washy and then pat them all on the head or they want to be happy. The poor things, they can't help it. That's nonsense. That's sentimental rubbish. Keep away from the enemy, please. He's a maniac. The torturer will torture you if you get close. Keep her out of his way. So it's not meant to be some sentimental, gooey concept. It's a very fundamental drive in every being, just to see the bare bones of it. I mean, a lion wants to be happy, but please keep away, it'll eat you. So it's not a sort of naive, fun, cute thing. It can easily be misinterpreted as that, because we love to gloss over all these love and compassion stuff, you know. It's seeing what drives beings. And what we're aiming for is to have unbearable compassion for them, because we're so deluded, you know. So the point here is in our own daily life, just forget the torturers, forget Syria. Just look at your own life, you know. So fine, go. You live with somebody? Do you have a partner? Well, you have your dogs. You have Harry. So you know, you run home to Harry. He's your friend, let's say. Yeah? You run home. Good. We can discuss Harry, because Harry lives with you. Let's just pretend. So you can go home to Harry. He is your friend, you know, rather than the Rottweiler 2 doors down will eat you for breakfast. Okay, so you keep away from the Rottweiler because it will eat you. But you go home to your friend. But what you've got to do, this is just as much as your Harry is with a person, because we are so attached to our friend, you in your case Harry, someone else's case John, whoever they might be, that's why we love them. That's why we want. It's easy when you're attached to somebody, where there's a connection and attachment to them. It's easy to want them to be happy, which is love. So it's better than nothing to have love with them, but it's based upon the wrong reason. So pretend you've got a boyfriend, and then he leaves you for the younger version. It's easy to want him to be happy as long as he's loving you. So it's easy. It proves that love is based on attachment. It proves it. Because when he does leave you, you don't still, oh, sweetheart, I'm so glad. Yes, please, I hope you pack your bag, you know. No way unless you're a high being. No, darling, I know. Sweetheart, here's the point. We've got to hear the point. That's how you work on it. We've got to see the bare bones way we are now, which is we love people we're attached to because they do what my attachment wants. Can you see that? Okay, that's what we're trying to look at. So then you go back to home to your friend. You've got karma with your friend. That's fine. But you've got this bit of a space there. That doesn't leave you, and the second one is with your enemy. Maybe you keep away from him. Don't go near him. You know, he's a maniac. But realize as a human being, and this is the point, which is already powerful. You've got what we're trying to realize is that there's a person that he is the same as your friend in wishing to be happy. This is so intense, actually. This is the first step. It's so intense, so easy to say the words, but to actually feel that he wants to be happy, just like my friend. And then the stranger, whom you couldn't care less about, exactly the same. Like a little beating heart, just like your friend, just like the enemy. So to have this sense of real equanimity towards these three, but you've got karma with a friend, so you go home to them. You avoid the enemy, and you might never meet the stranger again, not in this life. But there's some feeling there of their equality. It's quite a big one. This is huge, just to get this one. This is the first. This is the foundation. To really think about it. There's a genuine equality between them. And this is the point, it's only because of karma at the moment that he's my enemy. But I don't see this. When he's my friend, of course I saw it. And this is the joke. There's no inherent enemy, friend, stranger, because they keep changing life to life. In one life, they keep changing. So we keep changing our emotions towards them. So it's so superficial. You know, a day before you fell in love with John, he might have been a stranger. He's down the road, and you heard that he dies. Who is it? John down at number 7. Oh, really? He died? Wow, there you go. But now, because you're in love with him, you're devastated. Because suddenly he's affected your life, so you see him as more valuable. But in himself, he's no more valuable yesterday than he is today. And this is the point how we see we are so self-centered. He was exactly the same person with his little beating heart yesterday before you fell in love with him. But you couldn't care less if he died yesterday, because you didn't know him. But suddenly he's more valuable to you because now you know him. As if somehow his knowing you makes him better. But there's no difference. He's exactly the same. It really itself is quite strong to see the equality of people based upon this simple fact that they want to be happy. This leads us to the next little step in these 11. This sounds so peculiar. You need to calculate for this one. That all sentient beings have been my mum. Of course, in the West, we think this is meant to torture us, because many people don't have a good relationship with their mums, If you love your mum, it's okay, you get it. But the whole point here is using mother as an example of a person who's nurtured us and taking care of us. But the first step here is to think. If there are countless sentient beings, if we've all had countless lives, then it's not illogical to say we've bumped into each other countless times. And of course there will be my dog in the past, there will be my enemy in the past. The point here is to think there will be my mother in the past. Then we go to the next step where we then think about the kindness of the mother. There's something very interesting about this. Again, we've got to look at these words. The word kind even, we use it in a very particular way. So we think someone's kind, we think someone's kind when they do what my attachment wants. You think about it. It's outrageous, actually. Completely self-centered. Oh, she's so kind. You go to the cafe, you order chocolate cake, she gives you an extra big piece and an extra bit of cream and gives you a discount. Oh, you're so kind. I mean, she might have been... What?
A discount.
No. But I mean, we say she's kind, whereas she might just be knowing very well she's going to get a big fat tip out of us and be really actually mean. But it's not really logical, It's only because that you got what you wanted. The same kind girl might have bought us a lousy piece of cake because the cook did a bad job, and it's not her fault. We won't think she's kind. So so our mummies are the same. I mean, because our mothers must have done things that didn't satisfy our attachment, then of course, because we had this immense attachment, that's why we started getting angry with her. So the point, what I'm getting at here is the point here, when we attempt to think the mother's kind, but also the next sort of contemplation is that all beings are kind, which is another whole discussion. Let's do those two tonight, we can go to bed. This next step, the third step, we contemplate first, it's sort of like 3A and 3B. So 3A is you contemplate how the mother has been kind. And the logic being, if the mother's kind, they've all been my mother, they've all been kind to me. So we take the mother as an example. And I think for us it's a great example, because I mean, maybe most of us, I don't know, turned against their mums at some point. Did somebody never turn against their mother? Somebody always loved their mother? Some people really loved their mother before you did. Very amazing. That's very rare. Get mad at your mother? Did you get mad at your mother? Yeah, did you get mad at your mother? Well, there you go. There you saw it. There you go. Yeah. Right. Wonderful relationship. That often happens, isn't it? What happened then? Died. I see. There you go. How amazing. There you go. Yeah, there you go. So let's analyse that one. I think it's so interesting, Because, I think it's a really good example to use if your mother wasn't very kind. Actually, from her own side, wasn't very kind. Of course, we know that's possible. Some mothers are terrible people, Yeah, I believe it. No, I understand. No, I understand that exactly. So I think it's a really good example to think of a person who even wasn't very kind, but to try and then do the analysis of remembering all the kind things they did do. I think it's an amazing teaching for every one of us. Because we can see without illusions, when we have attachment to somebody, they just look divine to us every day. We see all the good things, but that blinds us often from seeing their faults. And that's what happens when you fall in love and then you fall out of love. When you're in love, you only see his good qualities. When you're out of love, you see all the bad qualities. And they're both extreme. So aversion or anger only... So when my mother... I remember the day practically, when I was maybe 12, when my mother fell off her pedestal. From the second she stopped being perfect for me as a kid, I remember it vividly. And that's when I started getting arrogant and angry and criticising and all those things. So what I'm saying is, when you start to get angry with her, then all you see is the bad things. And so for a certain period of my life, like you, all I could see was my mother did bad things. I could not see any good whatsoever. So it's a very humbling exercise to do. Even if your mother did do bad things, to remember even among that there were good things. And one of them, I think the first thing, I think even if your mother gave you away, the usual logical reason we would use in the world that no way your mother did anything kind, she gave me away. But she didn't abort you. If someone in your life saved you from under a car, you'd never forget them. Well, your mother didn't abort you. That to me would be a reason why a person who's been adopted should cry with happiness every day. I remember one of my sisters. I always talk about it and I feel bad when I say it because it's on tapes and things. So anyway, you've met my sister, Judy. One of my sisters, three of my sisters and I all had abortions. Early 20s, late 60s, you know. Come on, Judy, have an abortion, we'd say to her. Have an abortion, come on. She wouldn't have an abortion. She was 17. She decided she'd have the baby. And then she felt devastated and she decided to give it away. And then she was devastated all her life. And she's since met. She's now meeting her grandkids and his daughter. I'm so happy for her. After 60 years, she's now blissed out meeting her grandchildren and her daughter. It was heartbreaking for her. Because I think the daughter rejected her. For years and years and years rejected her. That must have been beyond devastating. Now, I know Judy decided not to kill that baby. Do you see what I'm saying? That's a huge thing. This girl should be crying in happiness that she wasn't aborted. But she had a life, you know. Now they're all friends. I'm so happy. It's just so good for Judy. It's amazing. I'm so delighted for her. But that's a really valid thing to say. She didn't abort her. It's a very good... And our mothers clearly didn't abort us. Here we are, still bopping along, you know. So, I mean, I just think it's a really humbling exercise, and this is the point here, to remember the good things that a person did. And that means that it necessarily wasn't something that you liked, but from their effort. Now, I know with my mother, she had 7 children. She never stopped thinking about us until the day she died. She did everything, even though she was deluded, even though she was attached to us. Of course she was. She made many wrong choices. I'm quite sure she did. But she did everything with the wish for her children. Never stopped thinking about us. That's just me. Almost I have to cry if I think about it too deeply, you know. And yet I hated her so much at some point. And that's because my attachment didn't get what it wanted. So to go past that and see the things that she did, how kind she was, to think about me, to feed me, to never give up on me, no matter how much I rejected her, that's worthy of gratitude, I tell you. That's unbelievable. So the mother is kind, you know, it's very clear. Meaning, doing things that help you, whether you think they feel kind when they do it is not the discussion. Like your mum, you know.
I think using my mum and myself is a kind of mutual affection and in my mind. Like, that's when I was 5, that's when I felt it. I know we had some time in later on to further say that I was the word when I was 5.
I see.
But then I realised when she said that, her mother died when she was 5.
I see. Who knows? Yeah, that's right, exactly. That's right. Yeah. There you go. There you go. That's good. So the other one, the second, the 3B technique, which seems initially more outrageous, even in the mother's time, is that all sentient beings are kind. And this is really very much basing it on the understanding of interdependence, of dependent arising. It's very interesting. And once you hear it, you can see it's faultless logic. That whoever thinks this way. So every being is kind because like this, think like this. Everything that we use in our life, everything that facilitates our life, is necessarily, if you think about it, like we talked about food, is necessarily the handiwork of sentient beings. So I just think of my socks. I always think of my socks, you know. I like navy blue and I like knee length. I know what I like. So when I go to the shop, I go to the shop where I know I don't go to girl shops because you get stocks with polka dots and all kinds of no good, you know, and they're all short. I go to the men's shops. So then I walk in the shop and I want my socks, you know. But even right there, if you think about this one, all beings have been kind. All beings are kind. Even I walk in the door's open. I'm not joking now. But people grease those doors, you know, grease the little hooks, the hinges. So the doors would open nicely. Someone, you know, if in a small shop, someone vacuumed the carpet. How kind, sentient being. Otherwise it'd be a messy, yucky shop climbing over the boxes. A sentient being did it, you know. It's not a joke, it's true. Who thinks this? All I care is about my socks. I get to the sock drawer. Where's the long blue sock drawer, please? He sends me to the sock drawer. He showed me where it was. And then even just you think, the socks, they're all organised on little hangers, aren't they? Little cards, little packets. Somebody designed those. A person designed them. A person wrote the words. A person typeset it. A person proofread it. A person designed the type. A person made the paper. These are not jokes, they're true. Now, I remember my mother kept everything her children ever gave her. This is what mothers do, I presume. Every little old drawing with her little Bobsy, I was Bobsy. She would keep this little precious drawing her Bobsy did. Now, this is my point here. Because when she looked at that little drawing, a dumb little drawing by a little dumb little 5-year-old, has no intrinsic value. When my mother looks at that drawing, doesn't her little heart beat? What does she see? Her little Bobsy's drawing, doesn't she? Well, that's what they say bodhisattvas are like when they've got this point. That everything they see is the work of precious sentient beings. The socks. If my beloved had made these socks, I would never want to be, like you say, sentimental. I would look at these socks every day and faint with pleasure, wouldn't I, because my beloved made them for me. But because a stranger made them, I don't even think of it. But a stranger did make them. A person made my socks. So then to have this gratitude, this thought of this kind sentient being who worked in the factory. They weren't thinking about me. You see, one of the other points is we think a person's kind if they think about me. The fact that they just do their job, that's not kind. So it's a different definition of kindness. It's the fact that someone did it at all. That's how come I've got socks. It's a fact. And if you think of all these beings, I mean, they say there's this bodhisattva in the cave. They say he was always crying, bodhisattva. Whatever he saw, whatever he did, he burst into tears. Because everything made him cry with compassion for sentient beings. This is a really powerful, tasty way. Not just to, right now we just follow, to see that everything is made by sentient beings. Everything, the food that's cooked, the building, the table, the book, the printing, clocks. Where do you think they came from? Sentient beings made them, worked at them. But we don't care unless they're out, unless we like them. If I really, these socks, and these are not bad socks, they're stretchy, they stay up, they're quite light, so I appreciate them. So I may be prepared to think of the people who made them, and I'm very happy. I do. I mean, I appreciate, like, Apple's products. I really can appreciate the designers, and I delight in the designers. I think of the designers. I think of Steve Jobs, because I'm so delighted by the products, because they suit me. But to also think of their kindness, the fact that they did it at all, and it's a fact, it's a scientific fact. Clocks didn't come out of the sky. Sentient beings did it. It's powerful. We never think it. We never, ever, ever, ever think it. We just think of what I want. And I'm prepared to say thank you if they give me what I want, but that's about it. Isn't it? Pardon? Well, that's a different discussion now. No, it's okay. It's a different discussion. It's true if you really, okay, that's true. My mother didn't care how bad my painting was. You're right, because she had such love for the painter. She would never have thrown any of them away. It's true. It really is true that if you're a real bodhisattva who truly sees everything as the work of others, you'd never say no to anything. You'd be full of love for it. So it's true. You wouldn't be this finicky, well, I don't want that design or this design. It's true. You really would be that way. It's a good point. But meanwhile, we're regular, so we can still prefer Apple computers to whoever else. Does anybody else not make any computers anymore? Or have you got the whole business? Anyway, what's the questions and we can go to bed? Any questions? Yes, Yeah. I know. See, this is... I understand. I understand that. All this I understand. All of this is true. No contradiction. Yeah. Yeah, but... Yeah, I know. Okay. I know. The reason... We've got to look at the reason. We've got to look at the reason, darling. The reason... I know that. Exactly. I absolutely agree with every word you're saying. So can we look at the reason what we're trying to accomplish here? Okay. Is that it's these beings who all want to be happy. Right? They're all wanting to be happy, these beings. We started with that one. Even the creeps. Try and see what drives them. They wish to be happy. Then we're trying to see that everything that it is okay, do you agree it's a fact? Okay, forget what, then we're not discussing motivation. Again, you're trying to find that you're prepared to see a person wants to be happy if they deserve it. That's not the discussion here. You see, the point here that we're trying to get is this development of this phenomenal love and compassion for every single suffering, another sentient being, so that we can have the wisdom to see their deluded minds and try and help them. That's the goal here. That's the goal. That's the only goal. So, it's a fact what you're saying. People do it out of greed, and they lie, and they steal, and they cheat, all that. That's a fact. No one's arguing with that. But that's not the point here. It's not the point here. It's just not the point. That's all. It's the point that, do you agree that sentient beings made this cup? Okay. And you agree that sentient beings made that, whatever it is that they use the font to try and sell, blah, blah, blah. People made them. The people in the factories, people designed them. And they all got constipation, a bit depressed, want their boys to love them. And the one who's just trying to get the right font to make people buy. In the end, they're suffering, deluded sentient beings. But they did make those things. So that's a fact. And that's what we're trying to see, that it's not just coming from its own side, but sentient beings did it. These poor, suffering, deluded mothers did it. And we're trying to have compassion for them. That's the goal. You're not wrong. No one's saying they're perfect just because they did something, just because they made a cup. You want them to be perfect before we can love them. I know, but you see my point, the discussion you're having. I understand your point. But can you see the point? So you don't want to have love for them, is what you're trying to get at. You'd rather they be, that's what I'm saying. You're not prepared to even see they want to be happy until they deserve it. Right. That's but we know that, don't we? And that's not see, this is not the tack here. This is not the discussion here, this is the point. What we're trying to do here is find a way in our minds to use logic to open our hearts to all these suffering people, because that's the point. We know they're suffering. But none of this is the point. You see, none of this is the point. You understand? None of it's the point, though. It's okay. So take this according to what you want to take it from. Otherwise, leave it alone. Yeah. The first step in this series of 11 techniques, which are techniques to help us open our heart to get to the point where we finally have such love and compassion for every single sentient being that we only want to become a Buddha to never stop benefiting them. This is the purpose of all this thinking. The first step in this process is to see the fault in the way we are now, where we see enemies, friends, and strangers. That there's no logical basis to our seeing them in this way. That we use because they harm me as a reason to call them enemy. What we're trying to do is shift our mind here and see there's a similarity between the three of them, that they all little beating hearts and want to be happy. No, that's not even the issue here. That's not the issue here. It's this bare bones recognition that they want it. And then what we move to is how they've been kind. Then we want to repay their kindness. Because in countless lives, these people who are your enemies now have been your friends. So even this is the point as well. And then we get to the point where we say we want to exchange ourselves with others. And then we get to do Tong Len, where you do these meditations where you exchange yourself for others, which we'll talk about. They're just techniques to help us to get to see. This is the point. When you have wisdom, you see that they're complete mothers who are suffering and harming terribly each other. Of course you see that. We're getting past all that to their humanity. And there's even the lion who eats the buffalo for breakfast. They're all sentient beings in this situation, doing these harmful things because they're deluded. So our heart breaks for them. Like a mother, her heart breaks for that junkie. Everybody else hates him, but she can see he's harming himself. And that's what we're aiming to do in our heart, open our hearts to every of these crazy mothers, all the meanies, the uglies and everything. Love is defined as, we're not there yet, that's about the sixth point, but love in Buddhist terms is simply defined as a thought. It starts with a thought. May you be happy. then you delight in someone's happiness. When you see someone smiling and you laugh with happiness, that's love. You just experience love for that person. And then compassion is the flip side. When you see them suffer, you want them not to suffer, and you find their suffering unbearable. These two really come together. Love is related to happiness, compassion is related to suffering. Yeah, sure. Eventually, when you've got this really powerful level of compassion, this is what compassion is, and because you've realised emptiness by this point, let's say really highly, there's no longer an assumption of an I, so the sense of empathy and compassion is just stupendous, absolutely stupendous. And this whole one of exchanging self for others, which is this very focused, outrageous level of compassion, where you actually would rather have the suffering than others. That level. We'll talk about it. You know, there's, they call it exchanging self for others, where you would rather, when you practice all these practices of taking on the suffering of others, rather than be happy than you, rather you suffer than them. Which means you've got to be a suitable vessel. You can be like a weird martyr type person thinking this, if you kind of all need to be loved, you know. So you've got to be a really suitable vessel who've done the wisdom wing and got some understanding of emptiness and gone beyond ego and way beyond attachment to really accomplish these. You're outrageous. We'll talk more tomorrow. Fine. 3 minutes to 9. So have you been watching your dreams, you been? Have you been seeing your dreams as dreams, or you just wake up and think, oh, I had a dream? Al, do you see your dreams as dreams? No. You saw you were dreaming. You knew you were dreaming when you were dreaming. That's right.
Yes.
You knew you were dreaming when you were dreaming. Oh, okay.
Yeah. I'm only one. I remember now, but I forgot the other one.
But you remembered you were dreaming as you were dreaming. Did you do anything about it? Right.
Well, what happened? The first one told us 2 months ago.
Yeah.
Quite hard to think about it. I've been dreaming that in fact I've gone to the bathroom and crying and focus on the water, the fire, and the whole.
Oh, the process of death.
Yes,
That's
I was
right.
trying to
Yes.
get this in the body.
Okay. Oh, you did.
The vapors and
Oh, wow, my God. And then what happened?
And I dreamt this dream. Well, I had 3, but I forgot by now. The other 2. It was discussed at the open sea. And I like the ocean, the green blue water, the sky. I climbed up into this on the beach onto this covered house on hills. And I just sat there within those. It must be warm, it must have warm eagles, eggshells, everything. Yeah. So that's what I was doing. Open eye. So, I've always liked the green water or whatever, and I love it so much. Eventually, the water was rising at the tide came. And panic came, oh, get out, we were waiting for it. It's not on the ground. And then I saw, then the next morning,
You didn't realise you were dreaming, is what I'm asking. You didn't know you were...
I was dreaming at the point where, when the panic came.
Okay, that's good. So what did you do then, I'm asking you? What happened when you realised you were dreaming? It was just a dream. What did you do?
I just kind of thought about it. The panic kind of shook me. That's kind of what happened.
Okay, but that's when you... So that's a good sign. There you go. You control your mind. Well done. Yeah. Oh, well done, girl. That sounds good. Has it been keeping you awake at night? Oh, my goodness. My goodness. So you're seeing your mind. That's right, yes. So it's all the dirt coming out is okay. It's all coming up. The dirt coming out. That's a good sign. The dirt coming out. Okay, that's good.
and I've been to see Brian.
Oh, there you go.
So I'm watching it. I'm new on it.
Okay.
Watching my reaction.
Well, good, Joe. That's good. Good sign, isn't it? It's all working itself out there. Well done. Good on you, girl. Keep trucking. So again, try and go to sleep. Okay, go to sleep. Yeah, so we went to the death process. Some of you weren't here for that. If you go sink into sleep, like you know. I mean, the thing is to try and just. It's good. It's good. The Lamas use this analogy that life is like a dream. And as we realize emptiness more and less an attachment more, it becomes more like less grasping, less sort of, oh my God, like drama, you know, where we are now. So it's helpful to practice when you dream, to think, to realize your dreams. So before you go to sleep, make the decision, may I see my dreams as dreams? And then you can change while you're in the dream. And then when you wake up, you blow your mind that you're still alive. Because your petrol tank of morality hasn't run out yet, which is the main cause of why we're still alive. So it's reminding ourselves of impermanence as we wake up, and then make a decision to come to the teaching, to the meditation, so I can continue to work on my mind, make the most of this precious human ego. It's a really good way to start the day. So keeping. And so we want to finish with a little prayer. You want to do dedication. Looks like the red one. We can sing it Tibetan. Gewajinyu dudar lama sangye drukyurne drowa chikyan malupa Jamchok Samchok Rinpoche Maki Panam Ke Gyuchi Ke Panyam Pa Me Payam Gom Ne Gom Du Bavasu. And may we never develop, even for a moment, the wrong views towards the deeds of our most precious gurus. With faith and respect came from seeing their goodness, may their true inspiration flow into our hearts. Thank you very much for doing. Now, Al has to find out if Dharmakaya the first. Dream about it, I'll get the answer. Al's job is to find out if the Dharmakaya is a person. So you can ask the lamas in the dreams. They might tell you the answer. You can dream about that and tell us the answer. Thank you very much, everyone.